Power isn't something you grab with force. It's something you notice, understand, and then claim. Most people never even see the game happening around them. They wake up, repeat the same routines, chase comfort, and then wonder why life feels tighter every year, like the walls are slowly closing in. But there's another type of person, fewer in number, quieter, more deliberate. These people watch how humans move. They pay attention to patterns, incentives, and reactions. They don't try to overpower the world. They learn how to navigate it. This is who Machiavelli was really speaking to. Not villains, not tyrants, but people who refuse to keep their power buried under guilt, fear, and constant self-doubt. His ideas aren't for the cruel. They're for the awake. For those who are tired of being played by life and are ready to start playing it intelligently. This is where the shift happens. From thinking like a victim to thinking like a leader. And that shift begins with a hard truth most people avoid. The world is not fair, and it never promised to be. Victim thinking is built on protest, a quiet or loud resentment toward reality. People should be kinder. Effort should always be rewarded. Doing the right thing should guarantee good outcomes. But the world doesn't run on intentions. It runs on leverage, positioning, and perception. The people who understand this early stop wishing the game were different and start mastering the one that already exists. A victim complains about manipulation. A leader studies it, learns its patterns, and then uses that knowledge with purpose, sometimes even to protect others from being exploited. Most people misunderstand leadership. They think it's about titles, charisma, or dominance. But Machiavellian leadership is much quieter than that. It starts internally, with emotional discipline. Because if you can't control your reactions, someone else will. If you're easily outraged, constantly guilt-tripped, or pushed into action by fear and shame, you're not in control. You're being pulled by invisible strings. The first rule of leadership is responsibility, especially for your emotional state. Machiavelli warned rulers not to be overly merciful, not to expose themselves through excessive softness, and not to make decisions from weakness disguised as kindness. That doesn't mean being cruel. It means not being controlled. In modern terms, it means this: stop apologizing for being strategic. We live in a culture that often rewards loud victimhood more than quiet competence. You're told that being agreeable is good, that always saying yes makes you likable, that self-sacrifice is automatically noble. But pause and ask the real question: who benefits from that? The people who don't reciprocate your effort? The ones who use your guilt as leverage? Machiavelli would never ignore that question. So what's more moral? To allow yourself to be drained by people who give nothing back? Or to protect your values so you can act with strength and clarity? Leadership isn't about being liked. It's about being effective. Victims chase validation. Leaders chase understanding. A victim asks, "Do they like me?" A leader asks, "Does this serve the mission?" Leaders don't move based on moods or crowds. They move based on vision, and not fantasy vision, realistic vision. The kind rooted in how people actually behave, not how we wish they would behave. Idealists build castles in the clouds. Leaders build leverage step by step. They start asking different questions. What do people want from me? What do they fear? What do they admire? What are they blind to? These are the questions of a strategist, not a servant. A victim accepts whatever role they're handed. A leader rewrites the role entirely. Machiavelli observed that people are quick to forget kindness, but slow to forget fear. This wasn't bitterness. It was observation. Human beings respond to pressure, to power, and to protection. If you want to influence others, You have to accept human nature as it is, not as you hope it might be someday. If you assume everyone is inherently good, you'll be shocked again and again by betrayal. If you understand that people respond to incentives and hierarchy, you create stability instead of chaos. The victim assumes people will do what's right. The leader assumes people will do what benefits them, and then designs conditions where doing the right thing also serves their self-interest. That's strategy, not forcing people, aligning outcomes. Machiavelli never said, "Be evil." He said, "Be prepared." Relying purely on the goodness of others is how people get conquered without realizing it. This isn't paranoia. It's preparation. And preparation is what creates calm under pressure. Leadership is rarely tested when things are easy. It's tested when everything is unstable, when systems collapse. Who do people look to? Not the loudest voice, not the most emotional one. They turn to the person who doesn't flinch, the one who stays steady, the one who can see several steps ahead. Thinking like a leader means seeing life as a series of negotiations, not entitlements. Every interaction sends a signal. Every decision communicates something. Weakness invites challenge. Certainty creates order. Silence, when used properly, speaks louder than noise. Learn to hold it. When Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both, he wasn't talking about terror. He was talking about respect, predictability, and boundaries. People don't respect those who constantly change shape to please every demand. They respect those who are consistent, grounded, and difficult to push around. If you want to stop thinking like a victim, stop waiting for permission to be powerful. Power isn't handed out. It's claimed through competence and self-control. And here's the paradox most people miss. The more control you have over yourself, the less you need to control others. Real leaders don't dominate. They attract loyalty through presence, clarity, and discipline. But they never forget the underlying laws of human behavior. Kindness can be real, but interests are always present. Everyone is driven by something. Your job as a leader isn't to eliminate ego in others. It's to understand it, work with it, and when necessary, work around it. Don't try to change people. Change the conditions that shape their behavior. A victim yells at the world. A leader shapes it. And the reason most people avoid leadership is simple. It's lonely. It means being watched, being blamed, standing without approval. Machiavelli understood that leadership isn't chosen because it's comfortable. It's chosen because it's necessary. If you're tired of being overlooked, used, or underestimated, you don't need more motivation. You need more understanding. Understanding how people move, how systems operate, how power flows. Then you learn how to insert yourself quietly, effectively, and with intention. You don't announce your strategy. You let others underestimate you. The strongest leaders move in silence until it's time to speak. And when they speak, it's final. If you feel like a victim right now, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you were uninformed. You followed advice that rewarded you with burnout instead of influence. This is the moment to switch paradigms, not from good to evil, but from passive to intentional. Everything Machiavelli taught can be reduced to one idea. Stop reacting. Start ruling. Rule your time. Rule your thoughts. Rule your responses. Victims wait. Leaders act. And the moment you stop waiting for fairness and start preparing for reality, your entire life begins to change. When you stop waiting for fairness and start preparing for reality, something subtle shifts inside you. You no longer assume people will treat you the way you treat them. Instead, you observe. You listen. You act only when it serves a larger objective. Leaders don't fight every battle they're invited into. They choose the ones that matter. Victims react to everything. Leaders filter. In silence, leaders watch people reveal themselves. In restraint, they gain the upper hand. Power is often less about force and more about patience. Machiavelli understood that many people lose not because they lack ability, but because they move too soon or speak too loudly. A ruler must know when to strike, but even more importantly, when not to. If you're easily provoked, you become predictable, and predictability, in the hands of someone who wants to control you, is dangerous. Learning to let things pass is not weakness. It's part of the long game. Emotional reactivity is a luxury leaders can't afford. Every time you allow anger, jealousy, or pride to dictate your behavior, you hand your position to someone else. Self-control isn't just a virtue, it's a weapon. The person who can govern himself commands others without saying a word. This is why appearance matters. Not in the shallow sense of pretending to be something you're not, but in understanding that people don't follow your thoughts. They follow your presence, how you stand, how you speak, how you hold silence, posture, tone, stillness, intention. These communicate faster than language ever could. Speak less, but mean more. Apologize less, but improve more. Seek less praise, but earn more respect. A leader doesn't need to be loved to lead. They need to be clear. Clear in their mind, clear in their values, clear in their direction. Confusion creates weakness. Certainty, even when silent, creates power. And power, when grounded in wisdom, becomes leadership. There's a reason the masses follow and only a few ever lead. Most people are trained to feel first, react second, and think last. Leadership reverses that order. First, you observe. Then you calculate. Only then do you act with precision. Acting on instinct can work in moments of danger, but sustained leadership requires intention. Machiavelli acknowledged that fortune plays a role in success, but fortune without preparation means nothing. Victims blame fate. Leaders anticipate it. The people who rise aren't lucky. They're ready. They understand that chaos is inevitable. The advantage doesn't come from avoiding storms, but from navigating them better than anyone else. The modern world rewards those who can remain calm while others panic. Those who can speak clearly while others shout. In that calm, authority emerges. Not the kind that's forced, but the kind that's recognized. When Machiavelli said it's better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both, he was pointing to this truth. Love is fragile. It fades. Respect, built on consistency and competence, endures. If you want to think like a leader, stop consuming the world passively. Everything is information. Every betrayal, every compliment, every negotiation. Leaders are always decoding, always learning, always adjusting. Victims experience rejection and collapse inward. Leaders experience rejection and analyze it. Why did this happen? What shifted? What pattern is forming? This way of thinking isn't about being emotionless. You're allowed to feel. You're just not allowed to be ruled by your feelings. That's the difference. The person who governs himself becomes the one others follow. And that transformation always begins internally. You can't lead others if you've never led yourself through discomfort. Leaders are forged in resistance. They don't run from pressure. They invite it. Because pain, when used correctly, becomes precision. Every time life puts weight on you, you're given a choice. React impulsively like a victim, or respond intelligently like a strategist. Most people vent. They complain. They lash out. Leaders pause. They absorb the hit without flinching, not because they're numb, but because they're focused. The mission is bigger than the mood. The outcome matters more than the ego. This isn't about pretending you don't feel. It's about making sure your feelings serve your vision instead of sabotaging it. People will test you. They will lie. They will underestimate you. Machiavelli never claimed this was unfair. He said it was inevitable. Expecting the game to be clean is how people lose before they even begin. The world isn't a moral courtroom. It's a field of power dynamics. That doesn't mean you have to become corrupt. It means you have to become clear. Clarity is protection. When you know where you're going, distractions become obvious. When you know your value, flattery loses its power. When you know your limits, temptation weakens. This kind of clarity isn't accidental. It's built through solitude, study, and honest self-reflection. Most people are too distracted to ever reach it. They drown in noise, in opinions, in the need to be seen. Leaders cultivate stillness. In stillness, they plan. In solitude, they strengthen. Public influence is always built on private preparation. Power cannot be improvised. It has to be rehearsed, refined, and reinforced daily through discipline and thought. Victims want the crown without the weight. Leaders accept the weight long before the crown appears. That's why so many people collapse when they finally gain power. They were never trained for it. Power without structure crumbles. Leadership without self-awareness corrupts. If you begin by building yourself, the outside world loses its ability to shake you. In an age driven by loud opinions and emotional volatility, true leadership looks like restraint. It looks like patience. It looks like strategy. It's knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. People don't follow those who are always right. They follow those who don't panic. Even when uncertain, leaders project composure. This isn't deception. It's design. Perception shapes behavior, and behavior shapes reality. When people believe you're strong, they treat you that way. And over time, that treatment becomes real. Leadership isn't about dominating others. It's about aligning them. The most effective rulers were never pure tyrants. They were tacticians. They rewarded loyalty. They punished betrayal without hesitation. And they made following them feel like the safest, smartest option available. The victim tries to convince. The leader becomes necessary. That's the highest form of power, not demanding obedience, but being the anchor others depend on. And that kind of presence is never accidental. It's built. To build it, you have to study power. Study yourself. Study the world. Read between the lines of conversations. Ask why people act the way they do. Learn from history, psychology, and failure. Every leader carries scars. The difference is they don't hide them. They use them. Every betrayal teaches something. Every loss sharpens awareness. The victim is crushed by pain. The leader is shaped by it. Machiavellian leadership isn't cold. It's calculated. It's not emotionless. It's emotion mastered. And once you understand that, you stop just reacting to life. You start designing how you move through it. The victim believes emotions justify action. The leader believes outcomes justify effort. This is one of the sharpest dividing lines between the two mindsets. If you're always reacting, you can't lead. If you're constantly apologizing, you can't command respect. If you're always asking, you'll never be followed. Leadership begins when you learn to stand still, grounded, intentional, and unmoved by every external push. People don't follow speeches. They follow presence. They watch how you carry yourself under pressure. They notice whether your behavior changes depending on who's in the room. Victims shift constantly, adapting their personality to seek approval. Leaders remain centered. Consistency builds reputation, and reputation creates momentum. Over time, that momentum becomes influence. Machiavelli emphasized that a ruler must appear virtuous, even if he cannot always afford to be so. This wasn't advice to lie. It was an observation about perception. People don't respond to your internal struggle. They respond to what you project. If you appear stable, capable, and grounded, they treat you accordingly. And eventually, that treatment becomes your reality. Victims want to be understood. Leaders want to be effective. Ironically, effectiveness leads to understanding without explanation. Most people spend their lives reacting to the emotions of others. They're dragged into arguments, pulled into drama, distracted by noise. Leaders observe all of this from a higher level. They don't jump into every fire. They assess the cost. What does this conversation actually achieve? What does this alliance risk? What is gained by speaking now, and what is gained by waiting? The leader's mind functions like a chessboard. It's not just about tactics, but timing. Not just strength, but subtlety. This doesn't make the leader cold or distant. In fact, because they aren't consumed by petty emotions, they have more energy to lead with intention. They listen more deeply. They see patterns others miss. They reward loyalty in ways that inspire even more of it. Leadership is a forgotten art in a world where everyone wants power, but few want responsibility. Victims avoid responsibility because it exposes them. Leaders embrace it because it refines them. When you take responsibility for your thoughts, your words, and your outcomes, you take control of your life. Control creates options. Options create freedom, and freedom allows you to lead without compromise. Machiavelli understood that those who rule well are rarely ruled by anything inside themselves. Mastery of others begins with mastery of self. Every day, you reinforce either leadership or victimhood, not in dramatic moments, but in quiet ones. How you react when things don't go your way, how you plan when no one is watching, how you hold yourself when there's no applause. Real power doesn't begin on a stage. It begins in silence. The silent moments shape you more than the loud ones ever will. It's easy to perform discipline in public. It's easy to speak like a leader when there's validation. The real test happens alone, when you could slack off, delay, or justify weakness because no one would notice. That's where leaders are built, or broken. Machiavelli taught that it's better to act decisively than to wait for perfect conditions. Victims wait for permission, for signs, for support. Leaders move first. They understand that the world rarely hands out green lights. Most of the time, you move through uncertainty and make it work anyway. Leaders don't wait for clarity to arrive. They create it. And when someone enters a room with direction, people feel it immediately. The atmosphere changes, not because of volume, but because of certainty. Conviction creates gravity. People are drawn to those who know who they are and where they're going. This presence isn't arrogance. It's quiet clarity. Victims overthink. They replay conversations endlessly. They doubt themselves, hesitate, and stall. Leaders reflect briefly, extract the lesson, and move forward. There's no time for self-pity in leadership. There's no reward for drowning in regret. You take the hit, learn from it, and continue. Momentum matters. When you lose it, you lose authority first over yourself, then over others. Discipline isn't always visible. Often it's boring. Waking up early when no one is keeping score. Choosing the harder conversation instead of avoiding it. Saying no when yes would feel easier in the moment. These micro-decisions forge leadership. Victims chase comfort. Leaders choose strategy. The two paths rarely overlap. Thinking like a leader has a price. You will be misunderstood. You will be judged by people who don't see what you're building. You will be envied by those who lack the discipline to do the same, and you have to accept that. Machiavelli warned against the need to be loved. The desire for universal approval is one of the greatest threats to leadership. Crowds are unstable. They praise today and condemn tomorrow. If your confidence depends on applause, you'll collapse when it disappears. Leaders define themselves internally. The world can catch up or not. The mission continues either way. But a mission requires more than intention. It needs structure, systems, and strategy. Victims hope things work out. Leaders prepare to win. They don't rely on motivation. They build routines that function even when motivation is gone. They design environments that support focus instead of draining it. Leaders eliminate unnecessary decisions. They protect their attention fiercely because they understand its value. Where your attention goes, your power follows. Scattered attention creates scattered influence. Leaders concentrate. They know when to expand, but more importantly, they know when to refuse. Saying no is one of the clearest signals of leadership, not from cruelty, but from clarity. You can't do everything. You can't please everyone. And if you try, you'll become exhausted, resentful, and ineffective. Leaders choose deliberately what deserves their energy and what doesn't. Power isn't only action, it's restraint. A leader doesn't respond to every insult. He doesn't defend himself against every accusation. Strategic silence is often louder than argument. But this silence is earned. Victims fear silence because they're uncomfortable with themselves. Leaders are comfortable there. They don't need to fill every gap with words. Their direction speaks. Their record speaks. Their consistency speaks. And that quiet confidence unsettles insecure people. Machiavelli understood that insecurity in others often turns into sabotage. That's why leaders don't just build themselves. They study the weaknesses in others, not to exploit them blindly, but to manage them intelligently. If someone is ruled by envy, confrontation isn't always the answer. Sometimes the smarter move is redirection, a role, a responsibility, a sense of importance that neutralizes the threat. Strategy over ego, positioning over conflict. This is Machiavellian thinking at its core. You don't always fight. You reposition. You don't destroy. You redirect. Power isn't brute force. It's elegance. Leaders think in sequences, not seconds. And because of that, they remain calm when others panic. That calm becomes their identity, their armor, their advantage. And it all starts in the mind, how you interpret stress, conflict, and resistance. Victims take everything personally. Leaders filter. Is this useful? Is this noise? Is this part of a larger pattern? They don't assume. They investigate. They don't guess. They verify. That efficiency saves energy, and saved energy compounds. Over time, leaders rise faster not by luck, but by design. This isn't luck. It's repetition. The distance between the victim and the leader is not talent, intelligence, or even opportunity. It's how long you're willing to stay in discomfort without escaping it. Can you stay focused when no one is praising you? Can you stay disciplined when there's no deadline? Can you stay steady when no one is watching? If you can, you're already on the path, because leadership is not a single moment. It's a pattern built quietly over time. Once you understand this, you stop chasing highlights. You stop performing for approval. You start building foundations. You show up for your future self instead of trying to impress your current audience. This is the shift from victim to strategist, from pawn to player, from spectator to sovereign. This is what Machiavelli was pointing toward, not cruelty, but clarity, not manipulation, but understanding, not dominance, but direction. Leadership is not about becoming someone else. It's about reclaiming what you were always capable of before you were trained to be small, agreeable, and afraid. The world doesn't lack intelligence. It lacks leaders. But before you can lead anyone else, you have to lead yourself out of the patterns that keep you reactive, emotional, and exhausted. That first internal victory changes everything. From there, momentum becomes inevitable. Leadership begins the moment you stop asking for less pressure and start asking for more precision. Most people waste their energy wishing circumstances were easier. Leaders use the same energy to sharpen their tools. If the world is hard, they get stronger, not crueler, but more resilient. Not numb, but more prepared. Machiavelli didn't call for emotionless rulers. He called for emotionally disciplined ones. To feel is human. To be ruled by feeling is a choice. That choice separates those who break under pressure from those who bend and recover. Every day gives you dozens of chances to lead, small ones that seem insignificant in the moment. How you respond to delays, how you handle conflict, how you treat people who can't offer you anything, how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. These moments build identity, and over time, identity becomes destiny. Victims believe leadership comes from opportunity. Leaders know it comes from repetition. You don't earn respect by accident. You don't gain influence by demanding it. You gain it because people watch you refuse to fold again and again without needing attention for it. That consistency makes your presence heavier than your words. In a world addicted to noise, a quiet presence grounded in clarity becomes magnetic. You don't have to dominate a room to lead it. You have to understand it. Read the dynamics. Observe the people. Listen first. Speak last. Machiavellian wisdom was never about power for its own sake. It was about order, about effectiveness, about playing the long game instead of the emotional one. Most importantly, it's about seeing reality as it is, not as you wish it were. When you do that, you stop being a victim of circumstances and start shaping them. The world doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It moves with or without you. You can spend your life reacting, hoping things soften, hoping people change, hoping fairness appears. Or you can rise. Rise with discipline. Rise with vision. Rise with the understanding that the game is already being played, and the only question is whether you're being moved or making moves. Machiavelli didn't write for the average person. He wrote for those willing to carry the burden of clarity, for those ready to think deeper, act smarter, and lead when others follow. You don't need to be born powerful. You need the courage to claim responsibility. And that responsibility starts now. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions improve. Now. If you've seen yourself as a victim, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you were trained to outsource your power. You were taught to wait, to seek approval, to soften your edges. None of that is permanent. You're not too late. You're not too damaged. You're not disqualified. What you are is accountable for your next move, your next decision, your next standard. Leadership isn't waiting somewhere outside of you. It's waiting for you to stop hesitating. The world belongs to those who lead themselves first. When you stop chasing validation, people notice. They don't always understand it, but they feel it. Curiosity turns into respect. Respect turns into influence. But only if you stay consistent. Victims change depending on who's watching. Leaders remain centered regardless of the audience. Consistency builds reputation. Reputation builds momentum. And momentum, once established, is difficult to stop. Machiavelli pointed out that a ruler must appear virtuous even when reality demands flexibility. Why? Because perception shapes behavior. If people see you as stable, capable, and composed, they treat you that way. Over time, that treatment reinforces your position. This isn't about deception. It's about coherence, aligning your inner discipline with your outward signals. Victims seek to be understood. Leaders seek to be effective. Understanding follows effectiveness naturally. Most people exhaust themselves reacting to the emotions of others. Leaders conserve energy by rising above emotional noise. They don't jump into every argument. They assess value. What does this engagement produce? What does it cost? What is the timing? Leadership is not constant action. It's intelligent selection. The leader's mind is always working in layers, not just what, but when. Not just how, but why. This doesn't make them distant. It makes them deliberate. Because they aren't drowning in petty emotions, they have more capacity to listen, to support, and to reward loyalty in meaningful ways. This is why people feel safe under strong leadership. Not because the leader is soft, but because they are stable. Predictability creates trust. Structure creates safety. Strength, when paired with foresight, becomes something people willingly follow. Victims try to persuade. Leaders position. Victims explain. Leaders demonstrate. Victims chase relevance. Leaders become necessary. That is the ultimate form of power, not forcing compliance, but creating dependence through value and clarity. To reach that point, you must study power, psychology, history, yourself. You must read between the lines of every interaction. Ask why people behave the way they do. Learn from failure instead of resenting it. Every leader carries scars. The difference is how they use them. Victims hide their wounds and relive them. Leaders extract lessons and move forward sharper. Pain doesn't weaken them. It refines them. Machiavellian leadership is not cold. It's calculated. It's not heartless. It's disciplined. The victim believes emotions justify behavior. The leader believes behavior must serve outcomes, and that belief changes everything: how you move, how you speak, how you hold yourself in moments of pressure. It prepares you for the final shift, the one most people never make. From reacting to directing, from surviving to shaping, from being influenced to becoming influence itself. And that is where true leadership begins. At this point, the transformation is no longer theoretical. You stop living as someone who reacts to life and begin living as someone who directs it. Events no longer feel personal or unfair. They become signals. Pressure stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like information. This is where victim thinking finally dissolves, not through anger or resistance, but through control. Victims move on impulse. Leaders move on interpretation. When something goes wrong, the victim asks, "Why is this happening to me?" The leader asks, "What does this reveal? And how do I use it?" That single shift compounds over time. One response drains energy. The other sharpens it. Leaders treat reality like a system, not a drama. They don't assume intentions. They observe behavior. They don't guess patterns. They test them. Every delay, every conflict, every unexpected reaction becomes data. Is this resistance, fear, misalignment, or simply noise? Leaders don't personalize everything. They contextualize it. This is why they conserve energy while others burn out. They don't chase emotional closure. They don't react to every provocation. They focus on leverage. Over time, this creates an advantage that looks almost unfair, not because they are superior, but because they are disciplined. Leadership, at its core, is the ability to stay uncomfortable longer than most people. Can you stay focused without praise? Can you stay disciplined when results are slow? Can you remain calm when you're misunderstood? Most people can't. They look for relief. Leaders look for alignment. Leadership is not a breakthrough moment. It's a stack of habits built quietly. Small decisions repeated daily when no one is watching. Choosing preparation over procrastination. Restraint over reaction. Direction over comfort. Victims chase intensity. Leaders build endurance. Once you understand this, you stop trying to look powerful and start becoming powerful. You stop performing confidence and start developing competence. You stop seeking validation and start enforcing standards. Those standards, repeated consistently, become your identity. This is why leadership feels heavy to those who aren't ready for it. Responsibility carries weight. Structure feels restrictive at first, but responsibility creates freedom. When you can trust yourself to act correctly under pressure, your options expand. Victims want freedom without responsibility. Leaders understand the order must be reversed. Machiavelli understood that power without self-mastery collapses. Leadership without discipline corrodes. That's why preparation mattered more than intention. Fortune may open doors, but only preparation allows you to walk through them without losing balance. Victims wait for opportunity. Leaders prepare until opportunity has no choice but to notice them. This preparation shows up clearly in how leaders protect their attention. Attention is power. Where it goes, influence follows. Victims scatter it across drama, opinions, and distraction. Leaders guard it aggressively. They simplify. They eliminate. They say no, often and without apology. Saying no is not cruelty. It is clarity. Every refusal protects a priority. Every boundary reinforces direction. Leaders understand that engagement has a cost. Time, energy, focus, once spent, they don't return. Wasting them is not kindness. It is negligence. This is where silence becomes a weapon, not the silence of fear, but the silence of control. Leaders don't rush to explain themselves. They don't defend every decision. They let outcomes speak. Victims fear silence because it exposes insecurity. Leaders are comfortable there. That comfort creates gravity. When you stop chasing approval, people begin to offer it. When you stop seeking attention, attention finds you. This is not manipulation. It is a natural response to stability and clarity. Machiavelli understood that insecurity in others is a constant threat to leadership. Insecure people test boundaries, provoke, and undermine. Leaders don't respond emotionally. They respond structurally, with clear roles, incentives, and limits. Strategy replaces confrontation. Leaders think in sequences, not moments. If I act now, what happens later? If I wait, what shifts? Victims think in seconds. Leaders think in systems. That is why they appear calm when others panic, not because they feel less, but because they have prepared more. Eventually, leadership emerges without announcement, not through force, but through consistency, not through noise, but through presence. And once that presence is built, the world responds differently, whether it wants to or not.